Good evening and welcome to the August 27th, 2018 Goffstown Board of Selectmen meeting. The first thing we always do at our meeting is we have the Pledge of Allegiance. So will you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up is the acceptance and corrections of the minutes,
Make a motion.
public and non-public on 8/13/18.
Make a motion, we accept the 8/13 public and non-public minutes with corrections if any need be.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, seeing none. Motion passes, so accept the minutes. Second thing we're going to talk about here is we have a proclamation from the town of Goffstown. And it's, come on up, Mary. Just so just sit up here in the front so we can look at your face and see who everybody knows who you are.
Here?
Yep. So, whereas a proclamation is a means whereby the town of Goffstown may honor the dedication of those individuals who have served the town, and whereas Mary LaValle became the town's assessing secretary on December 31st, 1996, and later assumed the duties of secretary for the building department as well, and then was promoted to secretary too on July 1st, 2012. Whereas Mary shines in her duties through the application of her many fine personal and professional qualities by her development of superb process, achieving high standards for record keeping, and her quick ability to jump between many tasks, and by her delivery of consistent and diligent aid to citizens, customers, and contractors, as well as to fellow employees for the many years she has been here. And whereas Mary has displayed an exceptional and competency in assisting seniors and military veterans in the guidance on how to apply for elderly exemptions and obtain veterans credits on property taxes, which has been noticed and remarked upon by many. And whereas Mary is now embarking on a new phase of her life, she leaves the town, us looking back with grateful appreciation of her steadfast commitment to her positions and in recognition of her longevity in public service. And now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Board of Selectmen for the Town of Goffstown, County of Hillsborough, State of New Hampshire, do hereby authorize or do recognize Mary LaValle and her nearly 22 years of employment with the Town of Goffstown and add our wishes to her happy retirement. We, the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Goffstown, County of Hillsborough, State of New Hampshire, by virtue of the authority vested in us, do hereby proclaim September 1st, 2018 to be designated as Mary LaValle Day throughout the town of Goffstown, New Hampshire, and urge all citizenry of the town of Goffstown to recognize that day as such. This is given under our hands and seals, and this was done on the 24th day. And we had a party on Friday night with Selectwoman Boyer and I both attended. And Mary, we want to thank you again for your 22 years of service. Do you have anything you wanted to say, Mary?
It's been a pleasure working for Goffstown. And you're not going to get rid of me. You're going to see me throughout the town. Periodically, I'm going to come in and just say hi and harass people. But thank you very much. It's been an awesome few years, quite a few years.
Again, thank you for 22 years of service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
So next up on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment?
Yes.
Okay, our public comment situation would be, make sure everybody signs in, and when you do come up, make sure you say your name and address, please. And if it's an odd spelling, give Gail a chance to catch up.
Sure. So my name is Karen Hughes. I live at 106 Lesnick Road in Goffstown. This is the third time I've come before the board asking that the board change its name from the Goffstown Board of Selectmen to the Goffstown Select Board. Since I was last here, I actually circulated a petition on change.org. There was 112 Goffstown residents that signed the petition. I have the petition here for you, and there were some non-residents that signed, but what I did is I went through and I highlighted all the residents that did sign the petition. Some of them, their location came up as other places, but I cross-referenced it with the voter registration, and I have the addresses for the ones that came up with different locations attached in the back.
And those are just like, those are signed petitions?
It's signed electronically, so somebody
Okay.
goes on the change.org website and puts in their name and their email address and their location.
But they're signed. It's a signed, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Some of the reasons that were provided for signing, one is from Jody Horton. She says, I'm a new resident of Goffstown and a mother of daughters, as well as an avid equal rights supporter. I cannot accept the decision against this simple but powerful change. The excuse of tradition is a facade of sexism. There's no justification for why this change cannot be made. Eric Emerlin, this is the right move to make. Claudia Bello, it's time.
Excuse me, are you going to go through all 112?
No. I'm just giving some examples.
Because I would just say, just submit that petition to
Oh,
the secretary. And
I
she'll-
will.
Okay.
Claudia Bello, it's time to get in with the times. Women are no longer at home because they are not allowed to do anything but care for the home and children. Women are out changing the world and working and want equality, so this is a step. Holly Tate, I feel we need to let our little girls know that they can do anything they want. So those are just some examples given. As some of you might know, yesterday was Women's Equality Day. It marked the 98th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. As you know, the country was founded in 1776, but only in the last 98 years were women allowed to vote. So thinking about the term selectmen, it was never intended to include women. In fact, the RSA that was referenced at the last meeting was not enacted until 2008. So that means that before 2008, if Select Woman Boyer was on the board, she would not be able to be called Select Woman. And I'm not coming before the board to request that we change the name to the Board of Select Women, which I could petition the board to do, but I simply want a gender-neutral name change to support the community and know that everybody is included in running and serving public office. I also have a statement that I'd like to read from my husband, who can't be here because he is.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's going to get a chance to speak. I'm going to limit it to like 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
a one page. So his name is Michael Conlon. He lives at 106 Lesnick Road. Dear members of the Board of Selectmen, this past Saturday, 3 days ago, the good people of this country stopped to recognize the passing of Vietnam War veteran, former prisoner of war, returned home, Senator John McCain of Arizona. I read about the former director of his prison in Vietnam, dubbed the Hanoi Hilton, where he was in prison for 5.5 years. The former prison is now a museum. This is what good people across the world do with symbols of brutality, injustice, and inequality. As a regulatory compliance professional and licensed attorney, I know language matters. Words are important. This is the basis for the rule of law in our justice system. Words spoken on the record under the penalties of perjury in an effort to seek the truth and find justice for all. Towns across our country and here in New Hampshire have sought to retire certain words that represent inequality, that represent injustice. The goal is not to forget them, but to enshrine them forever where they belong, in museums and other visible public remembered places, so we always have a reminder of why and who and for what we fought. I've read many news articles written about the Goffstown Board of Selectmen's decision to accept inequality and continue representing the injustices of the past, which have been well articulated to this board by both concerned residents and your own membership. To say that it sounds good, I guess, then vote against it is unreasonable. That statement is contradicted in the same breath with another quote stating, "There's no reason for it." Well, you've just provided your own reason. Words matter. For someone that doesn't have much to say, has at least been present when valid reasons were communicated, but yet refuses to step aside so reasonable people can do good for Goffstown, it's unclear to me why these elected town officials don't simply abstain and let the measure pass. You can still clutch your pearls of tradition while improvements happen around you. We have a planning board, a school board, and commissions. This is the only board that refuses to accept progress, and the reasoning is unsound. The Goffstown Board of Selectmen should reconsider its prior decision. Respectfully submitted, Michael Conlon.
Thanks.
And I will pass these along
Sure,
to the
thank you.
secretary. Thank you.
Was somebody else like to come up?
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is Ted Gatsis. I'm running for executive council, and I've been touring my district to visit with the different councils to let them know that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I will be back to visit with you on a regular basis, and certainly will give you my cell phone number so that if you have questions or needs in the town of Goffstown, you'll be able to reach me and certainly address whatever questions you may have. I can tell you that it's an honor to be running for this seat. It's a large district. It goes from Lee to Loudon, around to Londonderry, Bedford, Goffstown, Candia and Auburn, and all the towns in between. So we're making our rounds, and this is the 12th council that I've come to visit.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions of me?
I think we all know how you stand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Wish you
great
the best
day.
of luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Somebody else want to come up and speak? Again, say your name and address, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Judith Johnson. I live on 117 Page Hill Road and have lived here for almost 32 years now. I went to school, college in New Hampshire, and I had a great college professor, Professor Bryan, and in that class I learned the value of investing and saving. Now see, Professor Bryan, she was ahead of her time. And the reason I said she is because I was a high school teacher for 26 years, teaching both mainly juniors and seniors in high school. And I was very, very careful on how I worded things because I wanted to blast that image that students had in their mind. When you say professor, they automatically think of a male. In the late 60s and early 70s, firemen became firefighters. Policemen became police officers. Mailmen became mail carriers. Stewardesses became flight attendants. Words matter because they create a mental image in our minds, not just women's minds, but also men. And I can tell you, the ones that were more blown away when I said she were the males in my class. They were really blown away. I really do believe that the word selectmen is gender biased. It is time to change the name to Select Board. In 1761, Goffstown was incorporated. At that time, women were common law wives, running the household of their husband and bearing children. They couldn't even get a divorce. So if their husbands were mean, they were cruel, they couldn't get a divorce. They had to leave the home, and they were shunned by this community. This community. They had no rights. 159 years later, in 1920, women finally got the right to vote. And many, many women lost their lives because they believed in those equal rights for women. In 226 years after the incorporation, there's been, from my research, only 3 female select people. Select men, 3. They might have served several different terms, but from my research, I only found 3. Correct me if I'm wrong. 257 years from now, 257 years as of today, since we were incorporated, it's time to change, gentlemen, it's time to change. Keeping up because it's a tradition is not a reason. That is not a valid reason. traditions need to change with the times, because it does matter, because those perceptions go into people's minds. And 51% of this community are women, 51%, and they vote. And I vote every single election, every single one. And I'm watching, and I care. I come from a family of 6 girls. The first 12 grandchildren were girls. I have 2 daughters. My daughter even said to me one day when she was 5 years old, "Mom, does God have a husband?" And I thought, oh, I'm doing it. We were on a plane, and there was, my daughter said to me, "Is there, Mom, how come there's no female pilots?" And I had to point to a flight attendant, and I said, "No, see that woman, she's a pilot," because I wanted to blast those images in their minds. Gentlemen, Kelly, it's time to change. I'm very passionate about this. I have been my whole life, and I'm glad that somebody finally brought it up.
Thank you. Remember, I want to try to keep it at 2 minutes for everybody, because everybody wants to get a chance to speak. Kimberly, did you want to speak?
Yes, I do.
2 minutes, right?
Well, it'll be a lot in 2 minutes. So I'm Kimberly Peace. I live at 201 Goffstown Back Road. I'm the vice chair of the planning board, but tonight I speak as a citizen. I am here to speak on behalf of, or to appeal to the Board of Selectmen to consider the name change from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. When I first heard that this was presented and was rejected, I was surprised. I was disappointed that there wasn't any more concrete reasoning other than tradition. So I did some homework, and I wanted to point out, if you look into gender bias and sexual connotations among words, there's a lot out there. And there's so many more people who can say it better than me. So I brought a quote because I thought this was great. This is from Gender Bias and Sexism in Language in the Oxford Research of Encyclopedia of Communication. It says, I can give this to you, Gail. It says, "The hidden consensual norm according to which the prototypical human being, male, is embedded in the structure of our language." It's embedded in our language that the prototype of a human is male. And then, "Such linguistic forms have the negative effects of making women disappear in mental representations." Do you understand what that means? That means that when you go to vote in that voting booth for the Board of Selectmen, you are thinking in your head of a man. Not a woman, a man, because that's what these gender norms mean. And the use of gender-fair linguistic expressions can effectively prevent these negative consequences. And I also found some other research. Shifting to gender-neutral or gender-inclusive language respects and acknowledged all gender identities. In Goffstown, we struggle economically. That's not any surprise to anyone. We want to be an open, accepting, welcoming, inclusive environment to everyone. Making this statement now makes that point, as well as the fact that, this is being watched. There are lots of communities across Massachusetts, New Hampshire, who are going through this, who are making these changes. And we're being watched by the news, and people are seeing this. And I think it gives a very negative message of our town to say out there to the communities that we're holding on to this only because of tradition, that we're not being gender inclusive, that we're not being welcoming. And I also wanted to point out another website that one of the towns that changed their name said they chose the word select board because they feel like it does still remind the townspeople that you're selected. So it does speak to tradition, to the fact that here in New England we have these small town rituals. We go and we vote on our select board. So we're not abandoning that tradition, and we're keeping that as a part of the name. And I think that that was a positive point too, and something that sort of addresses the whole tradition angle. So I think that covered my points, and I hope that you will make this change.
Thank you. Elizabeth, did you want to speak?
I'm just here for moral support.
Okay. Somebody else like to get up and speak? Charlie, you wanted to speak? No?
I spoke last month, I'm all set.
Okay.
I'm Charity Frost. I live at 72 Serenitas Lane. I can spell it if you want. Okay. I'm the director of the Goffstown Main Street program, but I'm here as a private citizen to also speak in support of changing the name of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. And part of the reason that I'm here is because of the things I've seen being connected to this town, albeit for a short amount of time, for the last year. But one of the things I just did earlier this month was have a business forum, actually right here in this room. And it was a representative group of business leaders from this downtown village district. And outside of my board president, every single person in the room was a woman. So when we have inclusive language, we're representing the reality of our community. So some of the businesses that were here are owned by couples. So the wife chose to come instead of the husband. It doesn't mean that there are no businessmen downtown, but to be inclusive, I called it a business forum, not a business women's forum, although that would have been accurate that day. And the reason I did that is because I try to be inclusive in the things I do. And I think as a town, we do that in terms of trying to be open and accepting and inclusive. And I understand the idea of tradition being something that we've always done, but I think making a slight change because people have said this is something that is a small positive shift we can make to demonstrate our ability to be inclusive. I think it's one that we can go ahead and do. So I just wanted to say that. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment.
Oh, right here, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your name, you need to sign in, Peter. And then your name and address.
Peter Grigorakakis, 112 Gorham Pond Road.
It's a long name to spell, right?
Yeah, I gotta fix the pen, actually, hold on. I am a member of the Budget Committee, but I am not representing the Budget Committee tonight. I think Charity said it very well. I think we have an opportunity when it comes to changing the name of this board to be more inclusive, to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. It may have been mentioned before. The history of selectmen does refer to selected men. It was created during a time when women could not only vote, but they could not serve. And that was not by accident. I think we have to, when we talk about the 19th Amendment passing in the 1920s, we have to be very clear that that was not by accident, that they were not allowed to vote, that they were not allowed to serve women, okay? And that when that was discussed here in this state, we had selected men, and we had male representatives. The male representatives at the state level, you can go back and read their minutes. Apparently they kept minutes back then as well. And what they said about women in politics couldn't be said these days. They did not want women in politics. They felt that women did not belong here. The men who said, we are going to select men, did not believe that women should be involved. Many of them. Women's suffrage in this state began in 1868. They fought for many years. Okay, they weren't just given that right, they fought. And so today, we have that opportunity as a state to join the rest of these towns and make the right change so that my daughter doesn't have to ask if she can be a selectman, right? She's not going to be on a board of selectmen. She should be on a select board. So please make the change and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Seeing none, okay, well, go up. I'm sorry you decided to come up.
I hate public speaking, so I apologize in advance.
Give it a shot.
Yes, I'm going to. All right, my name is Pam Decker. I live at 22 Gorham Pond Road. And I wrote a little something because I was thinking about the vote that occurred and to not change the name, and I've been doing a lot of research. First of all, I want to thank each of you for your dedication and service to the community. I do know many of you outside of here, the trestle and whatnot, but I want to thank you for your time today, too. But I'm here to speak in support of changing the title of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. And I'd like to briefly just give you some examples of things that I've seen occur this year, to which really would, it would, a simple change that can make future generations better, whatnot. I am a well-informed member of this community. I watch many town meetings and board meetings on, thanks to GTV, on TV at home or on the internet. And during the Board of Selectmen's meeting that was held on March 26th, Selectwoman Boyer was asked how she would like to be addressed. When she was asked how she would like to be addressed, the current board suggested select person, to which she chose a designation of select woman instead, citing that her co-board members were designated as selectmen already. Now, my question for the selectmen on this board is, have any of you ever been asked how you'd like to be addressed in a meeting? The quick answer is no. I went back through as many as I could see. Granted, some of you have been around a lot longer than some of the footage, but...
Excuse me?
I apologize. Breaking the ice.
We must be talking about you.
So, basically, one can only assume it's because you're men, and you're on a board of select men. So, you're designated automatically as selectmen, and there's no question as to who you are. There's no reason for question there, and it's an example of an innate adherence to social standards and ignorant gender bias. Also, I just want to touch base on, others have touched on it before, but one of the many reasons why this town needs this change. In 38 years, cited in an article, and as someone else cited, much longer than that, we've had 3 women representing the Board of Selectmen for Goffstown. That's 160 elected positions, to which 3 have been filled by women, albeit some for multiple terms. And I came up with 160 because I know we only had 3 people on the board for a period of time until I believe it was 1995. So that's a ratio of 4% of women representation in our town. And from demographics that I could find, the latest demographics, which was 2012 to 2016, our female population was 9,500 versus 8,388 men. So this proves that women in this town are severely underrepresented, that word, in our town governance. And I do feel that historical oppression, such as the title Board of Selectmen, does play a role in this, impacting our younger generations. I strongly encourage every board member to reconsider their vote to change the title of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. Thank you for your time and listening to me ramble.
Good evening. My name's Leo Kelly. I live at 12 Hillsdale Drive in Goffstown, and I support the effort to change the name of the board. I was surprised when the vote came out a few weeks ago, because I always thought that Goffstown was a progressive community. Being progressive, I thought we would support women more than we do. I think your vote pushes us back a few years as far as supporting women. I would rather see the board change the name, support the future of women in Goffstown. That's all I have for you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close public comment. Thank you. Next up would be Megan.
Good evening. So tonight I wanted to talk about the Terrell and East Dunbarton Road bridges over Blackbrook. This project was to replace the bridge guardrail in kind And we put this project out to bid once and received no bids. I came back and asked for permission to put it out again. So we put the project out again, and after we made some phone calls to see if there was some interest, and we did get some interest, so we thought we would get some bids. So when we put it out the second time, we received one bid from Hanson Construction for $151,760. This is well over our budget for the project. We have $115,000 budgeted in CIP for the project, which also includes construction inspection as well by Fuss and O'Neill, who did the design plans for the project. So then what we did was we called MDS Welding and Fabrication, who was the company that did the Grizzly for the screener. They did that work for us earlier this year. So we called a welding company to just ask, you know, is this something you guys would do? You know, just because we're trying to figure out another option here. So Sarah, our town engineer, met Matt Shapiro out there and showed him the job and the plans and gave him the specs. And he said he would be interested in doing the work, but more in a combination with the town. He would be looking for us to take care of traffic control and detour signage and things like that. He also asked if we would be able to provide an excavator for about 2 hours on each bridge to help lift the rail off of the bridge, because he said, you know, this kind of stuff could help reduce some costs if we could do that. And the other thing he asked us to assist with is, which we had planned to do, cleaning off the rust on the bridge. There's so much rust from where everything has just degraded. So we need to try and clean that off in advance of them coming, and then also be there during the work to help pick up big chunks, you know, that fall down and stuff. So those were the things that the town would do with him. So he submitted a proposal to me. I asked him to draft something up, and he gave me that. And it is less than half of the cost we received from the second round of sealed bids. So I have that information with me to give to the board. I don't know, you know, if I should be throwing out his number yet. I just wanted to bring this up and see where you're at. I would be recommending moving forward with this, which I think would be a couple motions. It would be rejecting the bid we received, and then awarding to MDS Welding for the amount, which I can either discuss here in public or in non-public first if you would like. And then I believe it might require a waiver of the purchasing policy. Even though we've been through the purchasing policy twice, the step we're doing now, I believe, would be a waiver of the purchasing policy, which must be done by the board. So if they've done work for us before, they gave me a list of numerous projects they did, other large projects, you know, that they did, which I have those as well, too, to give to the board. So
Are you in for non-public tonight?
I am in for non-public tonight.
Can we discuss that now?
One question, if you
Go ahead.
There's two bridges. You see, I understood you were negotiating with MDS for one bridge.
No, for both.
Both, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let's bring it in the non-public.
Okay, sure. The other item I had was the Uncanunic Dam project. So as I told you at the last meeting, this project is completed. We did our walkthrough with DES, and Busby is requesting their second and final payment. In going through the closeout documents, they realized there was a piece of paper that they needed, which is an affidavit signed by them that says they've paid all of their subcontractors. And they are requesting the board to waive that requirement, because with this project, it was so short that they only got one payment so far, and this is their second and final payment. So they would be paying the rest of their subs with the second payment. I am agreeable to that because we have a 100% payment bond in place. The language in the specifications was actually not part of our standard language. It was added when Stantec reviewed our specs. They had an experience that was difficult for a town, and they recommended this to protect us. But you know, thinking of our situation now that we're in, I think the 100% payment bond covers us and does not put us at any risk, you know, for waiving that requirement for the affidavit to be signed.
Okay. So, Adam, how do you feel about that?
I think we are certainly protected if there had been any kind of indication throughout that we had any reason to believe the subcontractors wouldn't be paid. I might feel differently, but construction went well, project went smoothly from the contractor's end, so I think we can support the...
Do you have any idea how many vendors you're talking about?
I do not know how many subs that they had.
They couldn't have more than 5 or 6. It's not that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, they were even willing to provide it after the fact, if that made us feel better. You know, they said that's no problem whatsoever. It was providing it before their final payment. You know, they're being honest and saying, we haven't paid everyone in full. We would do that once we receive our second payment. So they had offered that. But again, I felt like the payment bond covered us, so.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion, we allow the funds be released for the Unkennewick Dam project for final payment.
A second that.
Any discussion?
What is the amount? I mean, is it,
The second bill, let me see, I should have that
I
on.
couldn't find it anywhere here, so I didn't see it.
I don't know if it makes a
Somewhere.
difference.
Okay, right here.
Well, yeah,
So
just-
payment one was 125,000, payment two, 123,000. And the retainage held after both payments are made would be reduced down to 7,000, so that's the retainage amount.
That's fine. I was just curious. Remember was.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, made by Mark, seconded by David. Any more discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
Thank you. And the only other item I have was that I provide the raw data results of the transfer station survey to you.
Yes, it's in the,
Okay, yep, and if you want to call me back to talk about that in further detail, just let me know.
okay.
Okay?
Adam, consensus folder?
Okay.
Or, yeah.
So, tonight we have some employee status reports. We've got a firefighter at AMT, new hire, part-time building secretary, new hire, and a part-time assessing secretary, new hire. DPW has a labor to truck driver promotion, and Parks and Recreation has a groundskeeper seasonal rehire. We've also got an event permit for Robert Tuck for a 5K walk run on October 20th from the Parks and Rec Center to the rail trail on East Union Street.
Motion to approve the consensus vote that's read to us.
Second.
Motion by David, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Upcoming meeting schedule, we have no further meetings this week. Next week, we've got a Labor Day, Town Hall is closed on Monday. Tuesday, we have a 7 p.m. ZBA meeting, room 106. No attendance there necessary. Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. EDC in room 106.
Yep.
And a reminder, we start our weekly meetings up again the following Monday on the 10th.
10th or the 11th?
Monday the 10th for us.
Monday the 10th?
My birthday.
Is it?
Oh, I guess it is.
I won't be here, David.
Next up, in your packet, sorry.
Go right ahead.
In your packets under 5C, we've got a nearly completed application for the 2018 Transportation Alternatives Program, the TAP reimbursement program. This, as you might recall, this is on our action matrix is due 9/7 as the final submission. This program is an 80/20 federal local reimbursement program for alternative transportation projects. As the board has authorized us to generate an application to apply for rehabilitation of the remainder of the rail trail that hasn't been upgraded to current specifications. So we've done that. We took a look. Selectman Pierce has been extremely helpful as is representative of the rail trail, Friends of the Rail Trail. We've got an overall cost of the project of $629,455 is estimated right now. That would be the entire project itself. Because it's a reimbursement program and not necessarily a grant, the town would have to gross appropriate the entire cost of the project in March on town meeting. 80% of that would be the federal share at $503,564, and then the remaining 20% local share is $125,891. That local share could come from taxation, unassigned fund balance, impact fees, private funding, any mix. In looking at the application ranking criteria, the scoring criteria that'll be used, these projects go to the regional planning commissions before the final selection by the state. And in meeting with the Southern Hampshire Planning Commission folks, they believe it's unlikely that more than one project from each region will get passed on through based on the funding that's available. I think there's, 50 million or so in projects that have been applied for $5 million in funding or some some crazy ratio like that. So it's pretty important to become the #1 ranked project in Hillsborough, or in the Southern New Hampshire planning region if we hope to make it through to the next round. So a good portion of that scoring is based on financial readiness. If we apply and say that we will put a ballot measure on the ballot, and we'll have to ask the voters for the entire 20% local share, we don't rank as highly as a community that might have a developer ready to write a check for the whole project, or maybe a special fund that they've got, a capital reserve fund that they have the authority to spend from for a project. We have a couple of good contenders. We have a strong project, but we've got a couple of other communities that have strong projects as well, namely Manchester and Londonderry from the sounds of it. So in order to try to bump up this 18% of the overall score, which is all based on financial readiness, we talked about a few ways to get to that 20% local match, or at least a good portion of it. The developer of 15 Factory Street has previously, as part of their discussions, as they get some of their early approvals from the ZBA and the Planning Board and the HDC folks, and as part of their 79E application, they had indicated a willingness to upgrade a portion of the rail trail adjacent to the Factory Street site. I gave a call and wanted to see if they would be interested in instead pledging some funds that, should the project be approved and the TAP program be approved, would they rather contribute hard funds instead of work during their project? And if so, that letter can count towards our local commitment and actually get us more points. So they indicated that they would. They pledged $10,000 for the portion abutting their property. And that would be in addition to any impact fees or anything that would be put upon them by the planning board as they go for site plan approval this year. Likewise, the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail have committed to $20,000 toward the project, so that's $30,000 in committed funds from outside groups, leaving a portion if we want to try to bump up that score for local funding. So I've given you pretty much the application as it stood on Friday in your packets, and we've got a few more things to tweak, and we've received a few more letters of support that I didn't include in here, but that will be part of the full packet. So the question I have before you tonight would be if you want to commit to anything from local funds, namely impact fees. I think is the most ready pot of money to pull from for a project like this that doesn't require voter approval, or if you'd like to submit as is and say that the remainder of the local funds will be asked of the voters in March as part of the gross appropriation article. Right now, the way the timing of this project works, we would develop a plan to get onto the March ballot, but we will know before the deadline to change the warrant whether or not we've been selected to go forward to the next round. So we could always decide to pull an article altogether if it doesn't look like we're #1 or #2. So that's where I turn it over to you, I guess, to discuss whether or not you want to try to beef up our local match portion up front.
Well, two questions I had when I was reading that. One says impact fees for recreation, and then also impact fees for roads. Now, it's my understanding we're trying to use the impact fees for recreational for our field project. And then impact fees for roads, isn't that, don't we need that for our roads?
So that's correct on both counts. The recreation impact fees right now, I believe we're just shy of $80,000 in impact fee accounts today, with some projects upcoming. So of course that balance will rise and fall as we go. But in the current CIP that's been presented to the planning board, which has not yet been incorporated, of course, as part of your budget, does request $60,000 in recreation impact fees to go towards the athletic field project this year. So that would be a question I guess you'll have to decide upon during the budget. If yes, you want to keep that number the same. You probably wouldn't want to commit to any more than our total impact fee balance currently. It might grow a little bit between now and the warrant being put together. But the second question, yes, we do have a transportation impact fees. I think it's referred to as road in some places and transportation in others, but that can be used for any mode of transportation, but primarily it's been used in the past for, you know, a planning study, maybe for a new intersection. Megan's talked with the CIP committee about including some funds in the future for redesigns at the Catamount intersection and Goffstown Back Road, I think, at Center Street. So there's a chance that that fund could be used for those, but they haven't assigned any numbers yet. So that one's it's a little more murky compared to the Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, I'm not really in favor of using the unassigned fund balance. I'd like to see it's going on to the voters and let the voters decide, because we've got more important things to use this money for, I think, than the rails trail is nice. I get it going, but it's being used as it is. It's not like it's impassable.
I'd be more inclined to use unassigned fund balance than I would be impact fees.
Adam, it's possible to have a split between impact fees and the unassigned? And both, if there was, wouldn't both categories be identified on the March article?
That's correct. So the budget law requires all sources to be identified in an article. So if you have a project cost $1 million and you've got $999,999 from somebody else and you only need $1, you can't just ask the voters for $1. You have to ask for $1 million. Oh, but by the way, most of that's coming from somebody else. That's the way the warrant has to read. So yes, it'll include any private funds. We wouldn't say from charter development or Hadley Falls development. It would say, you know, from private sources. But yes, you could have a split on the article of fund balance and impact fees if you want. The federal portion, 80% of that warrant article is what amounts to a short-term loan by the town to the project, and as soon as the project gets reimbursed from the feds, then that would go back into the fund balance. So, you know, the real dollars you're talking about are about 90,000, 95,000, I think, that hasn't been committed by private sources right now.
I have another question.
Great.
I believe the impact fees from the charter development at 15 Factory Street would amount to about $70,000, right? On the order of 70,000?
I think that's correct, yep. 99 units.
If that could be the dedication that the board would like to have from impact fees, then that would leave 30,000 to come from unassigned fund balance in order to make the 100.
Well, that's nice to take the impact fees for one big project and put it just into the rail trail, but there are other.
I'm just laying out options of
I understand
funding.
you laying out the options, but I'd take just all that money that's dedicated to other projects. I'm sure Rick's counting on that over at the fields and for his projects and stuff. And I know he's in charge of also maintaining the rail trail. I understand that. I would rather just hit the unassigned fund balance. I mean, it looks like it's a healthy fund. Why wouldn't we just do that? If you want the project that bad, why wouldn't we just do that?
Thank you. I would believe I would want the project that bad. This is the opportunity from the New Hampshire DOT to have a grant this large is very infrequent. And this is an opportunity to finish the last 2.25 miles or so, all in one contract and basically in one season. And I believe there's a significant number of the town residents that would want to see that done. If we weren't favorable towards finishing it in one contract, one season, and if business as usual with 20 and 30 and 40,000 grants haphazardly 1 year and skip a couple, you're talking 10 or 12 years of.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm advocating. I'm advocating we just go for the $90,000 or $100,000 right out of the unassigned fund balance like we've done for other projects.
And I'm very, very glad Mayor Gatkus is here, because the Singer Bridge over the Piscataquag River is bringing many visitors from Manchester and down.
Good investment.
So I would thank you for that investment.
Oh, boy.
I think to answer, Mr. Chairman, to answer the question about what the big reason for the difference would be here, primarily for that score. So 18% of the application score. If we're right in lockstep with everybody else, we've got a great project, we've got good community support, and all the rest. If we don't score high on the financial readiness piece, there are two other communities, Manchester and Londonderry, which can. Londonderry has developer money that's ready to apply towards the project and requires no voter action. So they're probably going to get maximum point value for that. City of Manchester has some ability to be a little bit more nimble with their funds to apply towards their application as well. So those two communities have been identified, at least for this scoring criteria, for 18% anyway, to be above us. So if we can even not get to 100% local funding, any piece that we can get above the 30 that's been committed so far by private sources would help our score and at least try to break us out above the rest of the pack.
So you're,
anyhow.
excuse me, but Ab, your emphasis on the word local funding, that implies that enfolds in the use of impact fees,
That's correct.
but it doesn't, fold in unassigned fund balance.
It can. It's just a matter of how readily available, how committed are these funds. Right now, impact fees are at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen, whereas the unassigned fund balance is not. So if the committee is looking at how likely are voters to approve this warrant article that we would be putting forward, if you've committed hard money, so to speak, towards the effort, and the 80% is what the voters are asked to do in a short-term loan situation of the project, they view it as more likely to succeed.
So I guess, what if we apply for this and we don't get it?
It goes back to what I've just said
Yeah,
before,
back to
Alan. It's, you're looking at a 10 to 12, maybe longer
Yeah, well, I'm just
project.
throwing that out there. I mean,
And
it's
all
possible.
Very possible.
all the agony of writing small contracts for many years.
You must be getting used to it by now.
Okay, so let's just run through the process. What you're saying is, if I understand what you just said, that if we use the impact fees monies, it has a better point than if we were to commit on impact, on a fund, unassigned fund balance.
That's correct.
David, is there any efforts to obtain more private funding?
The, other than the Friends of the Rail Trail with their donation, no, I've not heard of any. I've not been involved in raising money from other sources.
When does this have to be done?
The application deadline is the 7th of September, so I can
This is the
hand
last
deliver it
meeting.
on that date, but I kind of need we can be a little bit vague in the letter about what the mix is of that, but I did want to be able to indicate one way or another if it's a 100% local match or a lower portion of, and at least give them something to.
I'm concerned, I would have liked to have had Rick, what his plans are for those impact fees, because those are, that's recreation money, that's kind of what he plans on to do his project, and
Well,
I would hate to suck all of his money.
Our Parks and Rec director has been aware of this discussion for the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
I think the discussion at the Parks and Rec Commission about this topic was they did not want this project to hit the Parks and Rec budget or the revolving fund, but impact fees are, I won't say fair
Okay.
game, but they're.
Watch your choice of words there.
Right.
So what's the dollar value
And
of
when
the
that
impact?
occurred at the
One at a
meeting
time,
where
one at a
you
time.
were,
Yes.
you stayed halfway, and when they left,
They're in the budget.
their resolution was they're fine with this project, but not to have it in their budget to pay
Right.
for it.
And what's the road funds, how much road funds are you using?
So Megan's current balance, I think, is around 35,000. So there's about 78,000 in recreation impact fees and 35,000 in transportation roads.
You can see it's taking me out of the roads.
Yeah.
Roads.
It's more difficult, especially
I'm
with the
reluctant to take the road.
One at a
recycling.
time, please. Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, just with the recycling issue, I think it would be a bad decision to take it from. If we do have to transfer, I'd assume that's where it would end up
Well, you
going.
wouldn't take that out of impact fees, but you would use other fees, and then you replace them with impact fees.
The decision tonight is not which fund it would come out of the two, but just under the umbrella of impact fees.
Well, not according to what you're asking us to sign tonight. It specifically says recreation and road funds.
We could be more vague.
I think the two options I
Pretty vague.
left open, one was fully funded through a combination of, and then another I said partially funded through a combination of, but I didn't leave any percentages, if, for the discussion to make it easier.
What's the time for impact fees and the unassigned fees? How much would we have time to get? I just walked through the door.
Rick?
We're talking about you.
You're on the hot seat right off the bat.
How are you? You build a good time to walk in. Let me update you on what we're talking about. We're talking about the grant for the rail trail, which I know you're familiar with. And the proposal is to use a portion of your impact fees to fund it.
A portion of
For the match.
our impact fees.
Yeah, the
Park and Rec.
Parks and Recs impact fees.
Well, I do have to say that the commissioners have allocated at least $60,000 in 2019 to go towards the fields.
Okay. How much is in that account, Adam?
78.
60,000. That brings that down
Don't leave a lot left over.
18,000 left. And we need 90, right? About. Okay.
So that's, as I mentioned earlier, you've got that coming to you from CIP. That's the decision on your plate, whether or not to keep that recommendation as you build the budget.
How long will we have to wait for money from the unassigned fund balance?
So if the choice is to not fund the local portion any more than the 30 that's been committed, then the submission to the TAP folks at DOT would just say that, exactly that. We've got $30,000 committed towards the 125 for the local match. The rest, for the federal share and for the rest of the local, would be to the voters in March.
What we're doing now is if we don't do this, we're circumventing the voters. I just don't know whether, you don't have that much money, you don't have $90,000 in impact fees. And you're gonna drain all the money out of,
You're gonna Rick 60s.
out of Parks and Rec. No, they've already
that's
committed
right.
60.
When-
Let me finish. You're gonna drain 18,000, now clear out Parks and Rec, and then you wanna use, 35 out of roads? We're still a little short.
So nothing's been committed yet. CIP has been identified as that's the revenue source they'd like to use for the CIP project, but it's up to this board to put that through to the budget committee as you like. So it could be either increased, decreased, or removed altogether. So that's the question. I just want to make sure that
And I think
folks are.
every scenario we've just discussed in the last 10 minutes has involved some use of impact, the unassigned fund balance, right? So,
But if we use unassigned fund balance, we have to go to voters with another portion of that.
but, yeah,
But we lose points. The
But-
idea of using impact fees
would help.
would help for points-wise.
And it would be disingenuous to say yes, we've got 50,000 in impact fees we'd like to put towards this local match, but then turn around in March and ask for the whole thing out of fund balance. We wouldn't want to be in that situation with the DOT, so.
I think unfortunately we don't have that kind of funds in the CIP. Myself personally, I would just as soon hit it with the whole unassigned fund balance. Even though we lose points, we take our chances. We're spending money that we need in other areas. That's my own personal opinion.
I would agree. I mean, I hate to see us take it from other places that actually need the money.
Kelly?
I'm thinking. No, I think, it sounds like the other communities aren't going to have a hard time pulling full points,
Yeah, it sounds like they get their money ready.
which makes it difficult, but I don't think it's fair for us to pull fully from unassigned funds, so.
No, it would be. That would be the best way to do it, unassigned.
I understand that, but I don't.
Impact fees is, you're going to drain it all down.
I'm sorry, impact fees, you're right.
That's what you meant to say.
That is what I meant to say. So, I think if we're going to submit, we have to do a combination of both.
That was.
In a very vague way,
I'm
but.
back to the same
I
argument.
get it.
It'd be some combination, and, well, if it's only 20,000, at least that's some amount of the 95 we need.
Well, I guess you could do 10 and 10, to use 20,000 of impact fees, 10 out of each one. I hate to take money out of the road, so that's why we put that impact fee in there, was for roads. I understand transportation's part of that.
But I don't think we have to designate an amount. Is that how I'm understanding it?
It'd be my preference that you did, just so we know going into budget season kind of what
What your next top line is.
what the goal would be for the article as we start to build it out, but I think for the sake of the application, if you want it to be vague, we could.
Can we have Megan come up?
I guess, final question here, Adam. We can't totally bank on future impact fee funds, right?
Right.
'Cause we're all hoping for the development of
Right.
Factory Street, but that's too far down the path.
I would say.
Yeah.
Plus, in the case of the impact fees themselves, the planning board could waive them, could require other things, off-site proof, there's all sorts of things that could happen
I
with
think should
that.
have that
so-
money too.
Did you want to hear from Megan? Is that what you wanted to do?
Yes, please.
Megan?
That's okay. What am I speaking on? Just the
Impact fees.
35,000? I hadn't allocated anything in this year's CIP for like 2019. Derek and I were working on trying to come up with possible impact fees and what money was available toward those studies. So we hadn't had a final answer yet, which is why I didn't put a value in CIP, but in my notes, I had said possible impact fees toward the Catamount intersection, the design work, and that Grassmere traffic study were the two I was thinking of putting impact fee money toward. So the,
And what kind of money is that? Would that take up that 35,000?
yeah, so I hadn't put a value in there yet, which I was just talking to Adam about. We were kind of in limbo because Derek was trying to research what money was available and if some of the impact fees had to be used specifically towards something, and we never got an answer. So I had a note that I intended to use impact fees, but there's no value in that matrix yet.
Okay.
So,
If I'm still able to add it, I
guess
could.
time for a motion.
Yeah, I'm going, no, if you want to make a motion, go ahead.
Yeah. I have wanted to make a more aggressive motion, but I'll back off, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we apply for this TAP grant, and the board would dedicate $20,000 from impact fees, recreation, and the remaining amount, after we get $30,000 of private pledging done, the remaining amount would come from the unassigned fund balance. All of that would be stated on an article next March.
David, I'm sorry, just to clarify, you said 20K from Parks?
Impact.
30 from private, right?
30 from private.
Wait, but 20 from Parks and Rec?
Mhm.
But Parks and Rec
But
only
they
has
only
18.
have
Parks only got 18.
Well, right now, they've got 78.
I know, but
But,
So
but
but that's your
Rick already
decision,
has-
so he's
Right.
proposed 60. This board hears that number and can adjust up, down, or altogether. So this decision here would impact, unless we have a lot of new development, or a couple new houses built between now and budget season, how much you have left to play with.
Rick, did you want to say something? You're giving me that look.
come
No,
on,
no,
Rick.
that's fine.
Thank
Come
you.
on.
I think probably kind of like what Adam is saying is to find another $2,000 in impact fees, it probably could be there over the course of time.
So
It's not huge.
I would go along with David's motion. I'll second that motion, David, because
Thank you.
I think that we're only talking a $2,000 difference if we have to take it. I don't want to hit the road program. I just don't want to spend road money. We need that money. And yours is 60,000, may go to 58,000, to get the extra 2,000, or we can play with that when the time comes. But I would go with that motion.
So explain the money again, David, or Peter.
Okay, we're going to have the private donations.
Yeah, 30,000.
30,000.
Right, we're going to use,
20 from impact.
20,
we're going to use
75.
20,000 in impact fees. And then we're going to get the remainder from the unassigned fund
unassigned
balance.
balance. All right.
Which
So we're gonna take another 90 year.
The exact math will be done, I guess, in another week, but it's on the order of 75,000.
Correct.
Yeah, it's 75,891.
Go ahead, Rick.
Do we use the two, I know it's penny ante money, but could we use the 2,000 out of her 35?
As long as you don't want your road fixed. If you don't want your road fixed, that's fine. Tammy doesn't want her road fixed either. I mean,
Oh, I was gonna come in with a neck brace on.
Oh, jeez.
I'm only kidding.
yeah, I know.
It's all.
Okay, we'll make it work. So there's a motion on the floor. Does everybody understand it?
Yep.
Any more discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Motion passes. Thank you, Rick.
So,
Okay, now we have a public hearing scheduled. Over to that page. I hate this new setup.
Yeah,
I'll be
this really,
honest with you.
this really is a.
I'm looking for number 5, number 6.
I know, I keep flipping back to check the other.
Yeah, me too. I'm going back. Where's the page? Where's the
We'll get
page?
used to it.
let me see, right there.
Yeah, I'm right here. Okay, so, first up on our, would be property acquisition of map 8, lot 17-1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In compliance with RSA 41:14-A, the Selectmen announce a public hearing on 8/27/18 and 9/10/18, starting at 7 p.m. at Town Hall, 16 Main Street, Goffstown, New Hampshire, regarding the purchase of map 8, lot 17-1, 17-2, 17-3, 17-4, and 17-5, located off of Page Hill Road, totaling 50.2 acres, to conserve land bordering Page Hill Marsh, a town-designated prime wetlands. Any person with disability needs accommodation, please call Town Hall, extension 100, at least 72 hours in advance for arrangements. The negotiated purchase price of this property is $190,000, and it comes out of the conservation funds. Public hearing's open. Anybody want to participate in the public hearing? Come up, David.
I'm David Neiman, representing the Goffstown Conservation Commission, so just here to give a quick rundown on what it's all about. I don't know if you had a handout.
Yes, we do.
We're all set.
Okay.
We all have one.
Anybody in the crowd wants a copy? So the Conservation Commission, this is one of the target areas of the Open Space Conservation Plan, is the areas around these prime wetlands in this section of town, bordered by Page Hill Road and Stinson Road. We've negotiated the purchase of these Sanborn properties, which was a previously approved subdivision that has not been built out. So anyone who's looking at the map image and sees the road going into it, that road doesn't actually exist. That road will also be part of that area will also be part of the conservation land. This is a really high quality wildlife habitat area and probably one of the most scenic of the prime wetlands in the town. And what we plan on doing is developing this as a public access area where people can go for passive recreation as we define it in the open space plan, things like hiking and skiing and just getting out and enjoying the natural beauty and also the educational value of it. To make it accessible, because it's on Page Hill Road, we plan on building a small parking area right off the side of the road. I actually already discussed the idea with Sarah, our town engineer. We met on site and she came up with a few working ideas so that I was able to incorporate that into the budget estimates as well. The prime, this also abuts other existing conservation land, include a lot that we bought in the spring, and also directly runs into the Port conservation easement, which is held by the Piscataquag Land Conservancy. So it's building up a significant area of really valuable habitat. The prime wetland study in 2004 identified a lot of the principal functions and features on this property, including its ecological integrity, its wetland wildlife habitat, its educational potential, its visual aesthetic quality, its flood control potential, the sediment trapping that goes on there, nutrient attenuation, and urban quality of life contribution, both, you know, for the wildlife habitat and the aesthetic quality. This was all reported years ago in our prime wetland study. And there also are some endangered species in this area that the New Hampshire Heritage Bureau reports. We try not to get too specific on where they are exactly, because it sort of, unfortunately, there are some who will collect endangered species. But it's mostly endangered turtles and northern black racer. And the state, which has their New Hampshire Wildlife Action Plan, this marsh is ranked on their Tier 1, which is their highest quality habitat ranking in their plan. Now, the budget for the purchase, we did negotiate a purchase price of $190,000 for all 5 parcels. So for our budget, we start with that purchase price of $190K, estimate of $1,200 for the title search, $300 for recording fee, an estimate of approximately $10,000 for constructing the parking lot off Page Hill Road, and then I just threw in an additional $8,500 just in the vote to cover miscellaneous things like constructing the kiosk, any trail-related expenses. I expect that number to be quite an overestimate. Just whenever we do the vote and the Conservation Commission allocate the funds, we prefer to vote for amount up to but not to exceed, so that we don't have to come back and vote again because some unanticipated thing has come up. But we will, I'm pretty sure, be under budget. So in the Conservation Commission public hearing last week, we did pass a vote to allocate up to but not to exceed $210,000 to pay for the project. And this was an allocation from the Conservation Commission's Land Use Change Tax Conservation Fund. So this will not come out of the town's general budget. This will not lead to any kind of tax increase next year or anything like that, because this money is already in that allocated fund. As far as the impact on the town in general and the town overall assessment for taxation, the 4 lots that were designated for houses, lots 17-1 through 17-4, those are all currently assessed at $200 each for a total of $800. The remaining 49-acre lot or 39-acre lot is assessed at $1,500. So the total assessment on all these properties is $2,300, which is, you know, in the tax scheme, it's almost insignificant. It won't have any kind of impact on the taxpayers, which I think always makes everybody happy. And so that's where it stands. We've passed it in the Conservation Commission, and we've started this process tonight.
Thank you. Is there anybody here that needs to comment on this project? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Again, we'll take this up on 9/10. Will be the second public hearing.
David. Okay.
Should be on
5D.
Out-of-state travel?
Yeah, D.
5D. Sorry, that application's pretty thick, so he had to flip a bunch of pages in your packet to get to 5D, but here you go. Somebody could have put a tab on there for you. Sorry about that. We've got a request from the Community Development, the Economic Development Director and Planning Director for out-of-state and overnight travel, 2 separate occurrences, one for the AARP Livable Communities Conference in Charlotte, and one for a community development workshop in Keene, New Hampshire. Total cost is $1,291, and that would come from the Planning and Economic Development Travel and Employee Development lines.
$1,291 for both projects? Both?
Total, yep.
Motion to accept the overnight out-of-state
request.
travel requests for a total of $1,291.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
forward a couple pages, 5E, you've got a sample version of an update to the prosecutorial services agreement with Francistown. Proposed agreement remains the same as far as text of the agreement itself, but we included 2.5% increase to the reimbursement amount to $7,212 in revenue for the agreement term.
Any discussion? Need a motion?
Motion to approve the 2019 agreement with Francistown.
Second, for the amount of $7,212.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
You. 5F, we've got two new ordinances and one revision that are due for votes tonight. We've got a Rosemont Street speed limit, which is new for 25 miles an hour. We have a new parking prohibited on the southern side of the roadway between 4 Main Street and 7 North Mass Street, which is also new. Then you've got a revision to the special event permit.
And public hearings were already held on all of these, so this is a vote by the board to approve it.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance changes, specifically the Rosemont Street speed limit, the parking being prohibited on the southern side of the roadway between 4 Main and 7 North Mast, and the third ordinance change is a special event permit.
Second.
Motion by David, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
You. Next up, you have a sample letter that was in the signature folder under 5G. This is a letter of support for the Conservation Commission and the Piscataquag Land Conservancy, who are seeking a ARM funding grant. That's the Aquatic Resources Mitigation Fund with the State of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. So when somebody impacts a wetland as part of a project, they pay into this fund, and then the state's job is to spend those funds elsewhere to help protect and mitigate wetland impacts throughout the state. So these funds have been made available, and there's an application that's going to be submitted by the PLC, the Piscataquag Land Conservancy, with the support of Conservation Commission. And they had requested the Board of Selectmen also support the project, as it'll show local support. So the first letter you have is a copy of the letter that the Conservation Commission sent to the Department of Environmental Services, and the next would be a copy of the letter that you're being asked to sign tonight. Sorry, I should probably mention the project itself. It's prime wetlands protection, the Harry Creek corridor. This would be a, let's see, we've already purchased a 10.9 acre parcel adjacent to and a 50.2 acre parcel, as just mentioned, are also adjacent to this area. And the parcel number is, I don't know, David, help me out.
815, 837. And 813.
Thank you.
How come you didn't know that?
Oh, actually, it was in here. You can go further ahead.
Motion?
Make a motion that we sign the letter of support.
Second.
Motion's on the floor, authorize the chairman to sign a letter of support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you. 5H, I included the RSA, which provides for a selection of a selectman pro tem, RSA 65821A. I know Selectman Chairman Georgianis had indicated he would not be available on the primary day, and Vice Chairman Pierce is on the ballot, so I didn't know if you had any ideas. I was unable to come up with any volunteers for said pro tem positions to help with the polls.
I reached out to Scott Gross, he was supposed to get back to me.
Okay.
I talked about it the week, his wife's here, but I'm sure she's not going to speak for him.
The RSA doesn't require a Board of Selectmen vote. I just want to make it known to
Did you ask
folks.
Phil Devanza?
I I did not.
Bill Devan's is a good name.
Might be willing to.
Yeah.
It is only, not only, but it is a primary, so there will be a lower turnout than normal, but Kathy Ball did mention it was extremely helpful to have Sue DeRusso last time.
Please don't tell me that.
To assist. So any time between now and primary day, we can try to find somebody, and it doesn't require a board vote, just the actual board member that won't be available can do the appointing, so it's pretty liberal there.
I will find somebody to act.
I'll be
in my
available,
stead.
I already told Kathy, I'll be available that day.
Okay.
You're gonna be,
I'll be in Bernardville.
Kelly, you're gonna be in Goffstown also, right? So we should be all right.
It's still nice to have that.
Yeah, that's that one I can
It
forget.
makes a long day for,
Been in,
I did
one
have-
night before, so.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I did have a couple late breakers here. We had opened bids today for propane and gas and diesel, as requested to go out to bid. Low bidder for propane is Dead River Company at $1.39.95 a gallon. Low bid for gasoline was Santa Buckley Company, $2. Santa Buckley, Bridgeport, Connecticut. They bid $2.0199. And diesel low bidder is Dennis K. Burke, Taunton, Mass. $2.5495. I would recommend that we award to the three low bidders for propane, gas, and diesel.
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendations that the town administrator just read to us for the fuel, diesel fuel and propane for the year,
And gas, right? All three.
and gas. Yep.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, unanimous.
It's just a one-year contract?
Okay.
Just 1 year.
1 year.
Yep.
We
And
used to go longer than that, but the fuel is too unstable right
Yeah, I
now.
know.
It's hard to,
it's tough. We had a couple that didn't even bid because
They
they
won't
wanted
do it.
to
Yes.
email a bid in today at the very last second so they could be sure that it was a good number for the year. It's been pretty volatile. And the only other thing I had was a request from NHMA to consider a board position on veto override of the governor's vetoes of SB 446, and I forget what the other one is for the biomass plant. So there's a net metering. SB 446 requires or would allow a higher level for net metering of utilities such as hydro plants. So I think the current limit is 1 megawatt, but it can go up to 3 megawatts. And then the other is more for the North Country, the biomass plants. But NHMA is looking to see if any boards want to take an opinion and then petition the legislature to override the governor's veto. I think this would happen on 12th, I believe, is the vote to override.
Kind of short notice to be looking at.
Okay.
I'm still non-committal on all three, so I'm not.
Seeing none, that is all that I have for Section 5.
We already did 6, we're on 7. Committee meetings held since our last meeting. Library trustees? Oh,
David
did you go?
attended for me.
Library trustees.
I know, library trustees.
You're on a blank.
There weren't any changes or decisions that I need to bring to the board's attention.
Okay. Good enough. Alan? Parks
Yeah, I
and
had
Rec?
Parks and Recs, and it was mostly about budget night. And David actually was hanging around for the last part. I had to skip out about 7:15, or so, about halfway through, so.
Okay.
It was a good meeting, and Rick has got his numbers in line.
Okay.
Except for 60 grand he's gonna lose.
Sewer was canceled. HDC, Mark? Kelly, did you go?
No, David covered me.
David, you covered HDC?
Likewise, there were no motions for anything to be changed. I bring to the board's attention that they are working on a building use document for the Grassmere Town Hall, and that document's not ready for this board's review.
Okay. In conservation?
Conservation's been very busy trying to acquire all of these wonderful pieces of land, so that's primarily what we went over.
Good enough. We're on our matrix now, I guess. This new thing has got us kind of messed up here.
Got all the tabs on these things.
New format.
New
Jason.
format.
We'll spend a little more in tabs next,
Yeah.
next meeting.
Please.
New business, there was nothing submitted, committee meeting reports, anything in old business? Let me see what we got here.
Oh, well, do you want to go in order? I just have one to call out.
Go ahead.
The Eversource Glen Lake Waterfront Project.
Mm-hmm.
So Collis came last meeting and presented us with the plan from Eversource. And he asked that we make a decision whether or not to move forward so that they can continue that part of the project for the planting.
I'm sorry, not to move forward on what?
No, for us to approve. Yeah, we asked last meeting that we be given a little bit more time. Mhm.
Yeah.
He was at Parks and Rec, and he had a pretty good presentation. It looks like he'll do a nice job there.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of moving forward. He's been very diligent, and Eversource has been good at providing a lot of resources, so
Did
I'm
we,
pretty confident that that's,
did we appoint him as the liaison
we did.
last meeting? Okay, because over here it says he asked to be, has volunteered to remain on liaison. It doesn't say we did it, so. So,
I don't
I
think
think
there's
for
been
the
a vote.
continuation, yeah.
You've allowed him to continue to present the project. If you'd like to take a vote to appoint him, you certainly could.
yeah, I think we should. He's been on top of that piece of property since he lived over there, so.
Collis and I also spoke about the Conservation Commission, knowing that a large phase of that is going to be taking down a lot of trees right by Glen Lake on both sides of the road, so that we should probably, and preemptively have some communications ready to go out, because we know that there'll be people that are concerned about that if they don't know that that's, one, being replaced, and two, what, kind of what the project's outlining, so.
Is that something we can ask Eversource to do?
To what? Like put out a press release or something?
Yeah, put out a press release or a mailer, or,
I mean,
I would think we'd ask
we
them.
could ask,
Yeah,
yeah.
we could ask them to do that.
I just want us to be ready for that, so we can kind of preemptively
Yeah, 'cause
correct
it's
some
gonna be a
of those
mess.
calls.
Yeah.
First
I mean, the
it's-
library cut down 2 trees on the side end.
We
People
are-
were very upset, so.
Yeah.
Most of the residents are familiar with Glen Lake waterfront, and this project is to, as you're looking at the waterfront, 100 yards to the right of
Quite a
that
bit.
would be clear cut.
Right. So we need to
Yeah.
make sure it's on our website, and Eversource, try to get Eversource to put out some kind of a press release
I
or something.
thought Colin said they had had some meetings, and they tried to
Well,
put out
just-
mailers already, but I don't remember.
that sounds like it.
I
First-
assume that would be to the immediate residents, but my assumption is that a lot of the calls will be from people
Right,
driving
right,
past,
right,
what's
right.
happening, it's gonna be pretty significant amount of, that they have to take out.
Yeah.
And granted, they are replanting everything, it will be noticeable.
And first of all, let's do one thing first. Let's make a motion, have Collis to be the point man. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
Seconded by Mark. Any discussion on that? As he's been carrying it along all along, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done? Move on. Okay, next, do you want to vote, Adam, on the project itself?
Collis had asked for one.
Okay,
Make a motion that we approve the project from Eversource, the Glen Lake Waterfront Project, to move forward as recommended for the clearing of the vegetation or trees.
And the new plantings.
New planting as well to be done.
Thank you, Mark. I'll second Mark's motion.
any discussion on that? Seeing none?
Call for the vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none? Anything else?
Two items I had, neither was on the action matrix, but on the cover sheet, 1 page back. The town clerk had asked for your preference on routing of lengthy permit and notification information for projects around town. Would you prefer to continue to receive copies of those for your downstairs office, or would you like to just get a cover sheet that says if you want to see the whole thing, planning has it?
I think just
Oh,
a
we
cover
voted
sheet.
for a cover
Just
sheet.
yeah,
We don't need to see it
Just
all,
a- just
cover
a-
sheet.
letter downstairs would be fine. If we need to see anything, we can go upstairs.
And then the second item was similar to the NHMA request on the governor veto. Did you have any input on the legislative policy conference as far as a voting delegate would be concerned.
I saw that card in there.
I read through it. I didn't have any major concerns.
Yeah. We don't have anything to bring forward, I mean.
Okay. That's it, and then after tonight, the next meeting will reflect the update of the action matrix item for the 2018 TAP grant. And the last item on the action matrix, didn't know if the board would like to make a vote to address that or remove it from the action matrix.
Well, we already took a vote, so it shouldn't be on the action matrix any longer.
Usually it's a board vote to remove, so I just wanted to.
We'll remove that off. That's, do you want to vote to remove that, somebody, or?
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
On this subject of the, I'd like to make a motion that the governing board of this town be called the Select Board.
It's out of order.
It was on the action item here.
No, that motion's out of order. The only way you can reconsider a motion is somebody who voted in the affirmative can bring it up for reconsideration.
But this is a new motion.
It's the same motion, David. You're out of order. It's the same motion.
I disagree with you. It's a different objective in the motion. But it's your
No,
ruling.
it's the same objective.
Okay.
By rule, only somebody who voted in the...
The previous motion, last session, was to leave the name the same. This is the opposite motion, which should be allowed.
Oh, I disagree. That's the same thing. It's just wording it in a different way. We can play that, you can play that game every night. I mean, bring things up over and over again. But unless somebody who voted for the motion, for the approval of that motion, they can bring it up for reconsideration.
So bring it up.
That reconsideration only applies to the night of the deliberation.
Absolutely not. What are you talking about? You can't keep bringing up a motion time after time. You could do it every night. You can challenge me on it.
Well, I would like the board to accept or reject your challenge that this motion's inappropriate.
Okay, well, you making a motion?
Yes.
Okay, seconded?
Can you repeat the motion?
That I would ask the board to override the chairman's motion that
It's not a motion.
the chairman's
Ruling.
ruling that a motion I just made was out of order.
What's the outcome if that happens?
Then
would
my
have a-
motion
I'm
would,
just trying to
my
clarify the
motion
rules.
would be on the floor and an opportunity for a second.
Well, second, we still have to vote.
Somebody, so we have to, what we're voting on now is if my ruling that the motion is out of order. Do you understand what we're saying?
I think I do.
It took me a minute to process it. I was trying to figure out what we were doing. Got it.
Okay, this is not, has nothing to do with David's first motion. It has to do with my ruling that the motion's out of order. I'm going to give him that privilege to...
If in discussion of the motion that's before us, I have always been under the belief that if a motion was made, then you can make a motion of an opposite nature, and you would address that motion. And I understand you disagree, and I
think it's the same, you're asking us to review the same ruling,
But
the
with
same vote.
It's a different motion, sir.
Okay. So you understand David's motion?
I think so. I think he wants to, he's challenging your motion.
Right.
Right.
So it was seconded by Kelly. All in favor of David's motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So I'll take care of that.
So now you had a motion to take it off that?
No.
Did someone actually say to take it off the action matrix?
No,
Okay, just making sure. We had a lot of
no,
motions.
you know what? I want to leave it on the action matrix, okay?
Let's get this behind the.
Yeah, let's just leave- well, I just
I
assume
thought
leave it on
somebody
there.
had
Maybe we'll
motioned
take
that
a look
first.
at
I
it
just
again.
want
I have an idea for it, but I don't want to discuss it right now.
Okay.
So we
Okay,
get-
you're having your second shot at public comment.
Yeah, bring up your vote.
Go for it.
So I'm Tammy Gross, I live at 57 Range Road, and I came to give my opinion that we should be changing the name to Select Board. And the reliance on tradition is an excuse against progress. Tradition's bringing an apple to the teacher on the first day of school. It's not moving forward. And this is a bad reflection on Goffstown, on the people that you were selected to represent. And that's my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Kimberly.
Am I allowed to speak?
And I'm disappointed.
I think the audience would be interested in finding out, is there any other way that this issue can be reconsidered?
Well, you know, the potential, you know, it's on the action matrix. I did not take it off the action matrix, so we can bring it up again. I don't have a problem with that. Maybe there'll be some more information, or somebody can grab us and change one of our minds to change it. But it's important to know that in the town of Goffstown, okay, I don't believe that there's a gender bias. There are. Whoa! Whoa!
All right.
Okay, I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking. I don't expect you to interrupt me, okay? There are 46 women serving on boards in Goffstown, and there's 55 men. It's not that far off from an equal. I don't know if you know those numbers. I'm sure you've researched that, and you should know that. So the town of Goffstown doesn't have an issue with women. As far as the three select women that have served on boards, how many did you look and see how many women ran for selectmen?
You tell me.
3.
No,
And-
that's
Exactly. Because of the
How many were there?
Pam Maney, I'm trying to remember their names off the top.
There weren't that
At
many.
least 5 total.
There was 5 total and 3 were elected.
Would a man run for a select woman position? Yeah.
Let's get, whoa. Hold on, let's, we're not gonna banter back and forth or I'll close the public, okay? You're gonna come up, if you have something to say, you have a question, come up. I just stated, I did my research on if there was a gender problem on boards in Goffstown, that's the information I came up with. And I didn't think there was a problem when there's 55 versus 46. Okay, I don't think that, and I'm sure if more women ran, there would be more people. Like 5 people, I thought it was just the 3, but there's 5 women that have run for selectmen, and 3 of them were elected. So how can you really say that Goffstown has a gender bias? I don't believe in it. And I don't believe that's using gender bias as a reason to change the name of our board. That's my opinion, okay? And I hold my opinion to myself, and that reflects my vote, all right? Mark and Alan can speak to themselves if they want, but that's where I came from. Go ahead, Kim.
So just to clarify, so the 3 approving votes are the ones who would need to reopen the issue on the action meeting?
One of the prevailing voters, one of the prevailing voters has to bring it up for reconsideration. That's under Robert's rules.
Okay, thank you.
Karen Hughes, 106 Lesnick Road. I think the 3 voting members that have decided to keep the name have gender bias. And I don't know if that's subconscious or conscious, but I will tell you this. I am not voting for any 3 of you ever again. Ever again. This is absolutely ridiculous and abhorrent.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Christina Johnson, 5 Hillsdale Drive.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that into the microphone?
Christina Johnson, 5 Hillsdale Drive.
been a resident of Goffstown my entire life. Went to college in Goffstown, joined active duty military, came back to Goffstown, now raising our son who's going to first grade here next year. Can this be a conversation to some extent?
No, you're here to, go public
So
comment.
you're saying that there's no gender bias, but I'm just curious, in what year did Goffstown decide to change the name of a policeman to a firefighter, as it states on the town website, or a policeman to a police officer, as it states on the town website, and a fireman to a firefighter, as it states on the town website, and both of the organizational charts on the town website that report directly to you, Chairman? So I guess that's my question. Just think on it, reflect on it, and what year were those decisions made, and is it a decision for the town that it's being made to keep it as the Board of Selectmen and change it to the elected Board of Goffstown for all anybody cares? Just don't leave it as Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Oh, there you are.
Greta McGregor from Reed Street.
So, Retta, you're going to have to speak into the microphone
Okay,
so we have
I'm
it.
Greta
Thank you.
McGregor, and I live on Reed Street in the Meeting House. I know this is not going to happen, but I would just like you to all go home tonight and think about if this were in reverse and this were select woman and you all had to join and had to be called select woman. Having been a woman all my life, I know how it feels, so I want you to just take it into consideration.
Thank you, Retta.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Joey's really trying.
Joey
Good
wants to
evening.
get up there.
I'm Warren Denby, and I 42 Jason Drive, and I'm talking on behalf of the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail on a somewhat lighter subject. I need to report that last month a meeting was held, of all things, on the Goffstown Rail Trail, attended by the Federal Highway Works Administration, New Hampshire DOT, Bike Manchester, and Southern New Hampshire Planning Council, and we had lunch at Putnam's. And following that, we chose to burn off calories by walking on the rail trail. Of all of the trails in the entire state, they chose us as an example of doing things right. Secondly, Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail and Friends of the New Boston Rail Trail have met with Southern New Hampshire Planning Council and New Hampshire DOT, and these two organizations have started an initiative to mark Route 114 from the New Boston line and the West Lawn Cemetery, which is part of the state highway, as a dual-use bicycle and traffic area, which is another endorsement, as far as I'm concerned, that we're doing things right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Joey, did you want to get up? And you got up twice and sat back down.
Joey Boucher, 200 Norman Road. I come before you tonight. So we had some new decals made, and I'm looking for the permission to put them on 4 of the Goffstown Fire Department apparatuses in the front right corner of them. They were professionally done by Sousa Signs, who does our normal decals. I don't know if you just want to pass them. Sure. I got some more. It kind of just states Matt's service time on it, and at the bottom it says setting the bar, because that's what Matty always did there. I was asking, I came here tonight to do it in public comment, because you represent the community, the voice of the community, and so that's why.
Excuse me, Joe, could you, for the public viewing, could you explain what the decal is?
You just did.
No. Anyways, it's a decal that says Matt Burchard.
Yeah, Matt Bouchard. It has his fire service on the top, June 2008 to June 2018. And then it, just on the bottom, it says, always setting the bar. I felt that was a pretty good saying because anybody that came in or after Matt, I felt like they were always chasing him. You know what I mean? He always did just did the right thing. And so I don't need an answer tonight. I know it's going to take a minute. I just wanted to present them. And that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Want these back? Are they going to be available to the public, Joey?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
How much?
I haven't.
Okay.
We haven't set a price.
All right.
$50. $50, Alan said, and I'm willing to work with that. So, thank you.
Is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. And
Chairman?
What?
I'm ready for a motion.
Go for it.
Good. Motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A3, Roman 2. It would be specifically Bolegs A for compensation, B for hiring, C for adversely affecting a reputation, and D, real estate.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That'll conclude our public portion of our Board of Selectmen's meeting. We'll be going into non-public now. Thank you.